Welcome to the Earthworks podcast, where our team will share the jargon of carbon from many of our turf friends from the past 30 years.
Hi, everybody. I'm Joel Simmons for another Earthworks podcast. And today, between the holidays, we have Team Earthworks, and we're going to talk about State of the Union, as it were, and things that have happened over the season. We're very fortunate to have our dear friend Lawrence Mayhew with us. This is our typical Monday morning session for the last year since COVID hit. We've had the great pleasure of being able to sit down as a team and kind of geek out and talk agronomy, and having Lawrence on board with that has always been quite impressive, because it's allowed us to really kind of dive into stuff and learn things that we don't always have on our plate. One of the great advantages of having Lawrence with us is that we're always learning. And we really take great pride in the ability to constantly be moving forward. So I want to introduce to you the Earthworks team and go around the horn a little bit. I'll start with our agronomy staff by seniority, and then we'll end up with Mr. Mayhew. But Jack Higgins is our senior agronomist on staff. Jack covers the Northeast region of the United States and has been one of our focus podcast hosts over the last number of years. And Jack, you've been doing a couple big podcasts over the last number of years. Had one of our biggest ones with Mr. Rabideau from Wingfoot, which was a wonderful podcast. And if nobody saw that, you should see it, because we want those numbers to continue to grow. What else has been going on, Jack? What have you been seeing? What do you talk about? And
well,
first of all, go ahead.
About the podcast and the 2-minute turf talk and the whole kind of series that we started during COVID, I think it's excellent, because something that's always been unique, or I'd say unique, very special to Earthworks, is the greater Earthworks community. You know, that's something that I think you could define Earthworks as, is that we're a close-knit group, both all of us here on screen, but it extends much further out from here to our sales reps and distributors that we work with, and most importantly, the customers. You know, people that use Earthworks, it means something to them. They use it because they really believe in it, and they love what they get out of it. And I think that the podcast particularly has really solidified and strengthened that community feeling that Earthworks has. So I am very thankful for everyone that participates and gets on and shares their stories, and especially thankful for everyone that listens every week. And you know, it's been fun to hear listeners and customers and distributors that we work with say, yeah, I tune in every week. You know, I put it when I'm driving, I'm listening. Yeah,
it's certainly growing. And, you know, we've enjoyed, as a company, we've enjoyed great loyalty, and we are very, very grateful. And that's really what this podcast is about, is just to say thank you to everybody, because we are really grateful. We've had some phenomenal loyalty. Jack, you have spearheaded a lot of the work that we've seen with worm castings. You've done a couple podcasts, you've done a couple turf talks. It continues to grow. It's one of those things that's a little esoteric, because it's really kind of hard to completely define. But we've talked to literally hundreds of guys that have talked to us about, you know, we've suppressed worm casting using C3. Are you continually saying that? I mean, what's the word today?
Yeah, I had a conversation last week, but it was great, because I was chatting with the superintendent for a while, and you know, he was telling me about his year and everything like that, and that he was very consistent using C3 and wetting agent. Every time he was spraying fairways, both of those were in the tank. And I said, okay, great. Since I know how consistent you were with C3, I said, I'd like to ask you something, because I'm asking everybody that uses it on a very regular basis. He's like, dude, I know what you're going to say, and I haven't had any worm casts. I said, okay, great. He said, I'll tell you the best testimony you can get on worm cast suppression. You know, the way equipment managers, mechanics can be about their reels, you know. So he said, I've been here for about 18 months, say a little more than a season. And he said, when I got here in November So I was hearing about it from the mechanic. Okay, the reels are chewed up. Next spring, heard about it. The reels get chewed up with the worm casts. He said, now it's December and I haven't heard the mechanic mention it. He said, there's your testimony.
There's your testimony.
The mechanics, he wants to tell me what's going wrong, and this is not going wrong. So,
it's funny because we still don't really know why, but we have a good feeling. But the bottom line is that, even though it may not be quantifiable, we have had so many people come to us from all across the country and now across the world in all sorts of soils, telling us that this product has kept worms from dropping their castings. I tell the story of walking a fairway with a client, and I asked him, oh no, I got worms everywhere. And I'm walking the fairway and I don't see any castings until we get up to the approach, and it's covered and littered. And as we were walking up to it, his assistant walks up and I said, hey, Bob, is C3 in your approach program? Oh, no, we don't put it in the approach program. I saw him a few weeks ago. It's in the approach program now, which is kind of entertaining. So what else is happening, Jack? You've done some great podcasts. You got a couple coming up. You got one coming up with Pete Bachman in a couple days. Actually, week. Actually, that was last week because we're recording ahead of time, aren't we? So there you have it. I'm ahead of myself.
Time and space gets warped.
Time and space is hard for me. I know that.
It's cool because Pete harkens back to an internship back at Wingfoot. You mentioned the podcast with Rabidou, and Pete was there the last time that they hosted an open in 05. So he talks about that. Great podcasts. I think the best thing about them is that people enjoy it and that it's everyone's participating. The industry as a whole is a band of guys that support each other, and gals, mainly guys that support each other. I think that's kind of very represented in the Earthworks podcast, which is really nice.
Yeah, it really has been. I mean, it's been amazingly successful. And this was kind of your baby, your idea, originally starting the whole podcast series, because going into COVID, we just didn't know what was going to happen. And it's been incredibly successful. I mean, we're literally getting thousands and thousands of people listening and watching the podcast and on there. Let me move around the horn. Our next senior agronomist and now our national sales manager is Kirk Kastner in Texas. I had the great pleasure of having him cover my back last week in Houston, Texas, and San Antonio. And so, what's going on in Texas, in the southern tier of the world, Mr. Kastner?
Yeah, it's been a warm month actually, so that's been nice. We got some cold weather and some rain coming in right now, but we've been busy, like you said, back on the circuit. Got my kids.
And there's your daughter. I like it.
Yeah.
It's the holiday season. Hi, honey.
Holiday season. We're out of school and mom's at work, so I'm playing double duty today.
There you go.
Yeah.
You will not see my 16-year-old make a cameo on this.
No, because it's too early. Is that the problem?
Unless this lasts about 4 hours, you won't see him.
My 21-year-old just tried to walk in and I kicked his tail out, but it's
We're
all
not
good.
there yet.
But it's all good.
It's Reese.
Hi, Reese.
Hi, Reese.
If you're not watching, you can't see this, but this is a family company. Kirk, one of the things that you and I have talked a lot about, because we've really struggled in the last couple of weeks, the price of urea has just gone through the roof. And you work with one of our biggest customers down in Texas, BWI, and they've certainly dealt with this. But it's been a real challenge for especially small companies like ours, trying to maneuver through this market of, where are we going to be? I mean, we got massive increases in September, and then literally 2 Saturdays ago, we've got a huge jump in prices on raw material. Now, one of the good pieces of news on this is that Earthworks buffers that because we use carbon material as the backbone of a lot of our products. So it's really created a situation where we, we've been able to buffer some of that cost. But one of the things that we're really advocating for 2022 is the use of carbon-based fertilizers, because the prices are stable. And I think you're seeing that certainly in your market pretty effectively. How badly has this affected some of the guys in the field? As
Yeah,
we see these
I
prices.
mean, I think it puts us in a unique position, and it puts us in a good position to have those conversations of guys that have kind of been on the fence and thinking about it, but now the economics plays in our favor, and I think that they get to see those efficiencies in a carbon-based product and at a similar price point. So when you start talking about, the cost of units of nitrogen, and we're, even with that, and then they get to see all the benefits of obviously using a carbon-based product and the efficiencies and all the gains that come along with it. So it's been a good conversation, especially in, some lawn care, some municipalities, sports fields. I think it's just growing across the board, and our distributor partners are having those conversations with us, and it's been fun and unique.
Talk about the lawn care side. I mean, we talked to a lot of people at that academy we did last week. They were lawn care people. I mean, this might be the best time for a lawn care operator to start to understand that by putting in carbon, at least in one application in their system, that they can start to reduce overall inputs. And when the price of urea goes through the roof like it does, it's really going to help them create a better business and maintain the margins that they need to maintain. Because these folks, they set their prices at the beginning of the year and they don't change them because they really can't. And when they get price increases during the season, it literally, knocks a hole in their business. I remember 2008 when this all went down, and they were struggling to survive. And we lost a lot of lawn care operators during that time. And anybody can jump in on this conversation, needless to say. But, I mean, you're seeing that in your marketplace for sure, Kirk.
Oh yeah. It's been, and the guys that have, been on the program or, booked their product early are definitely in a good position going into 2022. So I think they're looking at some of those other companies that have been on the forefront of it and leaning on those guys.
Let me get around the horn just so everybody feels comfortable jumping back in, because I think these conversations should be a group conversation. But Kevin Hicks has been with us for, how long have you been with us now? I don't even know. Are you having any babies this year? Anybody?
4 years. Yeah, I was gonna say that my wife and I celebrated our 29th anniversary of our engagement yesterday, and no, we won't be having any more children now. Grandchildren maybe in the future, who knows?
But, that would be nice.
Yeah, you had 2 weddings this year.
We did marry 2 kids off this summer, which was great, and that was a little unexpected, but we gained 2 great daughters, and I guess that's the next step in the process. But I haven't quite wrapped my head around that stuff yet.
Must be a little different having daughters in the family, in the fold.
Yeah, it's great. It's great.
Fun.
We need to just water down some of the testosterone that's been running around the Hicks household for the last 25 years.
That's got to feel very good, I'm sure.
Yeah. No, it's been a great year, and I couldn't be happier with the relationships that I've been able to build out in the West, and in addition to the pricing of raw materials and products. I mean, the other thing that I think
freight
we're all aware of is freight and the logistics of freight right now, and how difficult all of that stuff is, not only from the distributor level, but in the planning that has to take place. It's never had to since I was a superintendent, by the superintendents. Hey, I need something on Friday is not, if it's Wednesday, that's not a request that's going to automatically happen anymore. And freight has obviously gone through the roof as fuel prices have increased, but there's also a limited supply of truckers. And I recently took a trip halfway across the country to spend some time with my mother in the Midwest, and it was always notable how many semis were moving across the interstates, and this time around it was noticeably less.
Yeah, what are they saying? 60% less truckers available right now?
Yeah, so all of those things I think have to play into our decision making and our planning, and not only from our supply side. And Lisa Kiefer obviously is instrumental in getting that stuff done for us, but it affects everybody on down the line as well. So
we had Lisa finally on the podcast a few weeks ago, and and anybody that knows our company knows Lisa. She is the best of getting trucks across the country, and it's been hurting her very badly because she takes it so personally.
Right.
And it has always been, typically you'd call and we'd have a truck under it in 2 or 3 days and it'd be on your doorstep. But those days are long gone now. And I think between, raw materials and supply chain issues, and in her case, the worst part of it is, of course, the trucking. We don't see a light at the end of the tunnel, and it's just a matter of planning and really being ahead of the curve in order of getting stuff out there. So it's important that everybody pay attention to the fact that things are going to be slow, and the days of calling up and having something on your doorstep the next day are going to be slowing down for sure if they haven't already ended.
Right.
You and I have been doing a lot recently on construction, especially in some of your client bases, and like you said, you've really gotten you've really made some great inroads in your marketplace. But we've seen a lot of good construction projects. I'm talking tomorrow morning on another one that's coming up, and 2 or 3 are coming down the road this coming year. So what are you seeing for construction, and what's the word on the street?
I think there's 2 schools of thought right now. There's a lot of people that we work with regularly that are thinking, there's got to be a better way to do this. And so those are the conversations that I think have been really, really productive for us, and especially in the Western U.S. where drought has been a continuing challenge for us. The cost of water, depending on where you are, the Southwest. I had lunch with a friend of mine from the Vegas market. He pays $1.2 million a year for his water, and the water is garbage. So anything we can do from construction on through to help those turf managers be more efficient with water is something I'm really focused on this year. And I think we're going to talk a little bit about one of the products that we're launching this year. But anything we can do in that regard, which we do have some tools in our tool belt that help with that, is a win for everyone.
Yeah, I mean, water is such a critical issue across the country, and we've been fortunate enough to have Mr. Wilbur on a couple of times. You just recently interviewed him, and we've talked to him about water and just the management of water. And one of the things that really drives home this point is that when we talk about water, and Dave says this constantly, is that it's the single biggest input into the golf course. And it still blows my mind that guys are paying $1.2 million for water, and it's crap.
Right.
The guys in the Bay Area are stuck with, in California, are stuck with affluent water, and it's laced with sodium bicarbonates, nitrates. I mean, it's just not helping anybody, and that's not going to get better either. So getting the soil to buffer all of that, and Lawrence can talk about humic acids, or humic products, excuse me. We'll have that discussion as well. But how humic products can buffer some of that. But yeah, there's a lot of stuff going on, and I think we've had a great opportunity to discuss a lot of these things right here on the podcast. But construction, and what was the phrase, you might remember this, that Dave Wilbur came up with construction? It's a penny in, a dollar out, or it wasn't quite that bad, but we'd stolen his quote a number of things.
Yeah,
It was 2 weeks. 2 weeks could save you 5 years or something like that.
Something along those lines.
I mean, it's one of those aha moments in the podcast that I think all of us here jumped on, and and luckily Jack has a memory as opposed to me. But it was true. I mean, 2 weeks saves you 5 years. I mean, it's a little bit of input can go a long way. And if you think about construction, it's the only time you can really get adequate volume into that greens mix. And it's the most important part of the property, and it's really not a big expense. It's a no-brainer in terms of doing that. And what we've been doing is using Renovate Plus and Myco Replenish and some extra Ecolite just to build, a soil in a soilless medium. And it's really taken off. We've done, hundreds of properties over the last number of years, and still, the ones we did 20 years ago are still standing strong. So.
And I think one of the things that's been a real eye opener for a lot of folks that I've spoken with is that we can offset some of the cost of some of the traditional amendments like peat, and do it in a very cost effective manner. But the difference is like you said, it's there for the long term versus some of the short term, the front end sort of benefit of some of the organics that are normally used. So I think there's nothing but upside to that whole conversation. And once we can have that conversation, it makes perfect sense. And like I said, I put pencil to paper, and doing it a little bit different way can actually save you some money in the long run. So I think there's a lot of positives to the conversations we have with our clients on how they can do things a little bit differently and a little bit better.
Yeah. And I mean, there's no question that the return on investment is huge here. So it really works out quite effectively to get the amendments put in up front. And, one of the conversations I had last week was, how do you actually put them in? I mean, I talked to Andrew Morgan, and he had just finished up 9 holes, and they had put all the amendments in right before final grade. But other superintendents will take it and they will put it in, as soon as the mix comes in, they'll start to flip it in and then let the architects come in and start the grading process. So there's lots of ways to do this, to work with your architect, to establish whatever needs you have. But as long as you can get this material into the top, 6 to 8 inches, it's gonna provide incredibly long-term, survivability and really take that stuff off. And most importantly, I think one of the things I like stressing about this more than anything is, in this process, we help produce less thatch. The traditional grow-in program, lots of nitrogen, nothing to really move the nitrogen through nitrification. All we ended up doing is growing a wonderful crop of thatch. And the architect would leave, and there would be the superintendent stuck with this, this property that has a good 2-3 inch layer of thatch. And that's just a very challenging thing to do. A good grow-in with a carbon-based approach prevents the growing of thatch. You build this beautiful humus profile. It manages water. It creates checks and balances for pathogens. It's got, playability. It's firm. It's fast. It's all the wonderful things that we really want to be able to see. And it's been proven over and over again over the years. Have I missed anything?
No. Well, let me plug a couple of 2-minute turf talks, because they were really well done. So on our YouTube channel, Kevin and Dave, you just kind of referred to it, just did a 2-minute turf talk called Hydromulch that kind of refers back to, if you don't get this right in the initial process, then you'll be. And Kevin says, if you're talking about Hydromulch, Kevin says, if you have a washout because there wasn't enough hydromulch, you're going to be staring at it for the next 5 years.
Forever, yes.
And
that was a great little soundbite. That
was a great line. That was a great, and it's true. I mean, how many superintendents would agree with that? I mean, everybody.
But that whole conversation of stabilizing that surface during construction and the long-term benefits you get for very little investment is what we're all about.
Yeah. How many guys actually use a hydromulch system on the greens? Do we know? I don't know many, but I think
not as many as should, probably.
Yeah.
They certainly use it everywhere else, and it's really effective to run the Earthworks granulars through it with the system as well, through the hydroseeder. So when you're blasting out the seed and the hydromulch and your tackifier, all that stuff, is that hydromulch and tackifier, are they the same thing?
No, that's an additive to the hydromulch.
Yeah. Okay. So you run Myco Replenish,
right?
Or Minfos or 343 or Renovate Plus. I've had guys run Renovate Plus through the Hydromulch machine. And it puts all of that in together. So yeah, I think that's one to check out on the Earthworks YouTube channel. Another one that you're touching on that was a great 2-minute turf talk was the talk about zeolite, ecolite.
Yeah.
It's an amendment. It's an amendment that doesn't go away. It provides you holding capacity forever.
And CEC.
Absolutely.
And a potassium reservoir, which is so important for the guys on sodic environments. Hey, Kevin, somebody asked me last week, I was traveling around California and I was talking about the hydromulching, and the concern was, would a hydromulch on a green surface create a layer?
And I asked Dave that, and he said, no, if you're doing all of the normal processes during a grow-in, that it's such a thin, minute thing that's going to break down. He says that he's never seen it he's never seen it persist past grow in. It'll break down just as readily. It's basically paper.
Right.
Yeah,
So
it's
it's
like
really
it's like a layer from seed aid or
Yeah.
pen mulch.
It's
It doesn't
going to
have
break
it.
down. I mean, that would be my concern initially, but once he said no, every time we've done it, we've just never seen any evidence of it a year later. So I think it's perfectly safe.
And if you're keeping your microbial counts up with carbon-based fertility,
Right.
biological soil
Right.
management, you're going to always be digested. That paper is going to go fast,
Yeah.
much faster than the lignous root system of a thatch layer. So
Sure.
the paper should bend out really fast. Let
Yeah.
me introduce our newest team member and our dear friend, Mr. Kuza. Chad Kuza, and I wish I could pronounce it properly as my Siri
did.
pronounces your name. No,
you're
Siri
fine.
pronounces it Kuza. Well, I don't know how
Kuzawa.
she does it, but if you go to Siri and ask her to call Chad Kuzawa, it's an interesting change of face. Chad is in Grand Rapids. Chad did a wonderful podcast this past year with the boys at Spring Forest. I thought it was great.
Ago, I think.
Was it 2 years ago? Well, then it's time
I
to
don't know.
get back on the horn. What's going on in the upper Midwest?
Kind of warmish, I suppose now. I don't know that everybody would agree with that, but no, I mean, it's kind of trade show season, holidays, things of that nature. So getting around, seeing folks, which has been nice. Going to Ohio, be with Kirk soon in Nebraska, and got all the other ones coming up. So that's just kind of nice getting back out with people. Just to go back, to the podcast like Jack was talking about. I'm doing a lot of meeting newer people, just kind of starting to get things going. I think it's awesome when people, get in touch with me and say, I found out about you through the podcast. I saw one of your 2-minute turf talks, so I think that's good. And I think people, from what I hear, I think people are appreciating that we're putting some pretty good content out there. So I'm pretty proud to be part of that community here at Earthworks. So like I said, we're just kind of growing and traveling on my end.
Yeah, well, we've
trying to get to know some more people.
We're first of all thrilled to have you on board, and as I've said to you many times, we basically threw you into a box and didn't feed you, threw you out into the middle of nowheresville. You're in a marketplace that has known Earthworks and doesn't know Earthworks, but you're getting around to a lot of guys that are not, traditionally Earthworks loyalists, and you've got to be running into guys that are starting to discover what some of these concepts are doing for them. What kind of stories do you have, or what kind of examples do you have of guys that are starting to, when their light bulb goes off and they realize,
Sure.
Oh, that makes some sense?
I mean, I can even be even simpler, here in Michigan, a little north of me towards the lakes, things like that. We're very sandy, we're very calcareous sands. Earthworks products fit perfectly into that. We're bringing in the right stuff. We're bringing in the right forms of those things. And it's been the simple light bulb moments that just show people, hey, you've been struggling with that. Just try X, Y, or Z. We'll look at it, bring some life to it, and get things moving in that direction. Traditionally, I think the area is, probably, done things certainly not necessarily the way we do them. I guess traditionally,
A little bit
I don't know
more
how to word that
conventional.
perfectly. A little bit more conventional. That's probably true. But I think like Kirk and you were talking, also like we're going to be in a whole new market here, pricing things like that. This isn't a new concept. To me, it's the right time to give something new a shot. And that's the beauty of superintendents in general, is they generally are, that's kind of their mindset. They're willing to try some things, and you're problem solvers. So I look forward to hopefully just getting some more opportunities with some folks, show them what we can do and things of that nature.
Starting to work with some distribution, which is kind of nice.
Yeah. So it's been nice. Indiana, Ohio specifically this year.
Working with 10
I think
barge.
working with 10 barge seeds. We've been reintroduced, I think, to some customers who maybe had access to us from previous jobs, maybe back in the early 2000s when we would have had that available in that area. But no, it's been really nice getting to work with some folks, getting around and meeting some more supers as well.
Carbon-based fertility is not conventional in the truest sense, but I think it's, everybody now is moving in this direction. Even the Andersons are using humics to, add to their programs. And so the concepts are really there. And it's, you've told me a number of stories where guys have, tried our product and they went back to a different product and then they came back. And it's really the concept more than it is us trying to sell Earthworks. But the concept of feeding the soil is fairly basic agronomy. And once somebody starts to see the value of feeding their soil, making nitrogen work better, being able to build water holding capacities, and you're in this virgin territory that is really starting to take off for us, and obviously because of all your hard work and helping people discover, that there is a different way to go about doing it. And in a year like 2022, when the price of nitrogen is what has it done, Kirk? Doubled in the last month or two?
In the last 6 weeks, yeah, doubled.
It's
Urea.
doubled.
Yeah,
No,
That
it
was
just
already
tripled
up
in
from
6
January.
months.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was
So I
already.
mean, because all of the Earthworks products are so carbon based, even though we have products that are bridged with ureas and ammonium sulfate, they're still going up at a much slower pace than conventional fertilizers. So this is really the time, in everybody's market to really start looking at that. So keep up the good work, my friend, and good luck with your large headed child, who we think is the greatest looking kid on the face of the earth, and your new child coming down the road as well. And I congratulate you. Lawrence, are you with us?
Thank
Are you
you.
hiding behind the screen?
I'm here.
So Lawrence, we spend every Monday talking about all sorts of weird things. And I think about a year ago, Kevin started really hitting me up to record these things, because as we get down the road of 10 minutes into a conversation with you, we're going to forget everything. But we've covered pretty much the gamut of technical things, from Jack's favorite rhizophagy, certainly to your expertise with humic substances. One of the things that you've taught us this year, and I'd like you to elaborate on this, because we keep using the phrase, at least I do, in speaking engagements, humic acids really aren't acids at all. So we really shouldn't be calling them acids. I mean, I think that's such a common statement in the industry. And I say this in classes all the time. I don't think there is probably more than a half a dozen facilities in the country that don't have something in their shop that has a humic substance in it. And you see, I'm now referring to them as humic substances because you taught us, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but you taught us that they're not technically acids. Help us understand that a little bit better.
Well, humic acids and fulvic materials are operationally defined, which means that they're described only in terms of how they're chemically extracted. They're not described in terms of their chemistry or their components or anything like that. So I'll give you a good example of an operationally defined material would be sea salt. If you evaporate sea water, the material left behind is called sea salt. Well, within that sea salt are numerous things besides sodium chloride. There's some trace elements also. So, but that's a good example of an operational definition. So people kind of throw the word around humic acids as if it's a real material, a product or something like that, when it's a definition. And I don't think most people realize that when they say the word humic acids, they're actually stating a definition. They're not specifying exactly what they're talking about. It's just kind of a curiosity in a sense. The fulvic materials are even more complex to describe because they have to go through numerous steps in order to become a recognized material by regulators and by chemists. So does that help a little bit? It's a very confusing subject.
Yeah. There's 5 faces here staring back at you. I don't know. Go ahead, Jack.
Well, let's just talk about humic acids, and I like that. I like the analogy to sea salt. So you evaporate H2O, you evaporate water, and you're left with a bunch of salt, but it's not just sodium chloride; it's everything else that's in the water.
A lot of magnesium also.
So now with the humic acids, I think similarly, you're putting a material into a big alkaline bath, a solution that has a very high pH.
Yes.
And then the opposite of the alkaline, the acid, it precipitates out, and that's why it got that name, because it was really opposite of the bath that it was in. Is that accurate? I mean, can you?
Yeah. That's, if you look up the definition of humic acids, they are exactly what you said. They're materials that have been treated with alkali, and you have a solution of alkali and who knows what, and then you hit it with an acid, usually hydrochloric. And when the acid hits it, the material that falls out of solution is the definition of humic acids. In other words, the dark materials that fall out of solution. Well,
Now you say
obviously,
hit it with an acid. What do you? So I'm picturing like a big vat. Of an alkaline solution with the leonardite in it.
okay, you just used the word leonardite. You want to explain what that means?
Well, the oxidized lignite.
Good. It's a trap.
Brown coal. Yes. So I mean, the parent material for the humic acid,
Right, raw material.
which is a mineral, which is a mined substance. It's from the earth.
Yes.
So that mined material is in a big vat that is full of alkaline solution, and then you say we hit it with acid. What does that mean? Pour
in some hydrochloric acid, drop the pH down to 2 or 1. One is
so that must be a lot of acid if it's sitting in something that's alkaline, like alkaline, a pH of 10 or 12 or
yes.
So then we're dropping that all the way down to a pH of 2 or 1.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So you're going to see two things in the final product, because they use potassium hydroxide almost exclusively. There's probably a potassium guarantee on the label that accompanies the product. What they don't say is how much chloride is in that product. There's going to be quite a bit.
Because of the hydrochloric acid.
Yeah.
Okay, interesting.
They could process it further, but I don't think most of them do.
So then we have material. Now the original rock or substance that we put into the vat, is that kind of dissolved? That's down to nothing, or what? It's gone into solution, or is that rock still around?
The active ingredients that we're after, the humic acids and the fulvic fractions, are in solution at that point. And there's this material that will not dissolve in either acid or alkali, and it's called humin, Humin. Some companies promote it as being beneficial. Most companies that make these liquid materials really don't know what to do with the humin. It's a waste product. And I'm not aware of any use for it.
Okay, so now we have humin, we have a solution, and this is prior to putting in the hydrochloric acid. Drop that hydrochloric acid, or I imagine maybe they take the humin out first.
Yeah.
Before they put the hydrochloric acid in.
Yes.
Okay, so we remove the humin. We just have a solution here. We drop the hydrochloric acid into that solution, and now all of a sudden what was totally liquid has started to form a solid in there. It precipitates. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay, so the precipitate falls to the bottom of that vat.
Yes.
And
that's what we're after.
And that's what we're after?
If you're looking for humic acids, yes. But they
now you're confusing us again. I thought there wasn't a humic acid. See, so this is what we go through every Monday. We get confused, and then we get smart, and then we get confused again.
I really don't think this is helping.
No, I don't think it is either.
Okay, so let me ask it a different way, Lawrence. This is kind of how my head's working. So you've got the humin fraction, which you say is probably not a useful byproduct or result of the reaction.
Well, we're still looking for uses.
Sure, because you have to find a use for it. And you've got the precipitate, which is what we're trying to capture. You've also got the original solution to get that precipitate to react and create the precipitate. What happens to that?
That can be used to separate out the fulvic fraction.
Okay.
You just you just described what the industry has called fulvic acid, singular, for many, 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 many years. And that term's been out there a long time. In other words, what's left over in this
The
liquid
residual.
solution? Yeah, that's now officially called the fulvic fraction. And in there may be some fulvic acids. There may be proteins, there may be lipids, there might be amino acids. There's a lot of things in there that are beneficial. So over the years, people said, see, my fulvic acid works really good. But we don't know why that worked good, because there's a lot of stuff in it.
So it's a misnomer then to call it a fulvic acid, because it would be more than likely alkaline, correct? Or not?
At that point, yeah, right. Isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
Wait a minute. Let me back up. We just dropped the pH to 1, so it is acid solution.
It is. Okay.
Point.
Okay.
Yeah.
I misunderstood that.
All right. And another confusion is that you have said to us at one point or another, there may not even be such a thing as a fulvic.
Oh, fulvic acids are defined by the International Humic Substances Society by a process, not chemistry, and they make samples, and they put these samples into tiny little vials, and they charge, and it's a powder, by the way, freeze-dried powder. They charge $135 US dollars for 100 milligrams. So if you see a big jar or a bag of, quote, fulvic acid, that would be worth millions of dollars if it were the real thing. And I see it all the time. I just went to a show where a guy handed me a sample of fulvic acid, and I looked at it, I recognized the color, and I opened up the jar, I recognized the smell. And I said, "You want the bad news?" And the guy said, "What?" I goes, "That's lignosulfonate." That's exactly what it is.
Okay,
But-
so that gets to my question, because I hear it a lot, and we all do, is I'm good. I've got a great humic acid that I already use. What is a great humic acid? As a chemist, what do you consider a quality product? What would you expect the results to be in using that product? And why do you pick what you pick for our products?
Yeah, well, humic acids are renowned for improving the effectiveness of fertilizers, N, P, and K, and micronutrients. They're very good at increasing the efficiency of their use. They also provide the conditions for microbial activity. So it's a combination of two things. The reason why they work is because they provide the conditions for microbial activity. They stimulate microbes, they stimulate their growth. And they also, I hate to use the word chelate because the industry uses it somewhat, but let's call it complex. They will complex with cations and make them more bioavailable. And oddly enough, this is the part where it gets a little unbelievable. They will stabilize nitrates that have an overall negative charge. So they actually have a certain anion capacity in addition to cation capacity. So they're wonderful materials. Now, if you want to buy some of it, how would you know whether you're getting the real thing? And you won't remember anything I said. So how are you going to figure this out? You look for the Humic Products Trade Association seal. That organization was formed in 2010 just to try to get rid of the confusion, cut through the confusion, and in one glance of a label indicate whether or not this is a legitimate product. It's traced back to a standard, and that standard happens to be the one and only analytical method out there in the whole world that has been validated for the analysis of humic substances. So they've managed to cut through all this stuff that I'm talking about and essentially look for that label, the Humic Products Trade Association.
And you encouraged us many years ago to become a member, at which we are proudly a member of the HPTA. And by doing so, we had to have everything that we claim to have humic substances in it tested and approved. And in fact, we found a couple of things that we had to make some changes, and you helped us make some changes. So, I mean, I don't know of many people in the turf industry that are HPTA members. but it's certainly been something that we're very proud of. And we try to talk to, because again, really what the association is, it's a consumer protection association. So, and I hadn't heard that story you just shared where you went up to a guy's booth and you looked at his fulvic acid and realized it was lignosulfonate. I think that's very common in this industry. I think we're seeing
just last week.
Yeah, I think we're seeing a lot. I know all of us have seen this over the years, and I've seen competitors that make claims that are not there. There's a claim on a product label that says humic acids derived from humus, and I think we all know that there's virtually no humic acid in humus.
Some.
Maybe some, but certainly not enough to make a product out of. So, I mean, by following the HPTA, we've been able to help people rest their mind assured that what we're doing is as legitimate as possible. And the other interesting thing, Lawrence, since we've been working with you pretty closely, certainly since the passing of Jerry Brunetti, which was, by the way, 7 years ago today. We're recording this on the 20th of December. Since Jerry has left us, and we started working with you in this HPTA, you've actually come back to us a number of times, having reviewed HPTA, research materials, and said, "Hey, I just found something that's actually pretty good. Let's pull some of your stuff out and put this stuff in." And it just continues to get better and better because of all the work that you've been doing with the HPTA, and you've been discovering some of the best humic substances in the world.
Yeah, they're out there.
Definitely. And getting better all the time. Let's talk a little bit about a product that you helped us develop that we're calling K-Vantage. And it really stemmed from work that we've been talking back and forth on this Monday meeting of ours about ways to help clients that are fighting sodium to find a way to reduce sodium impacts. Now, one of the things that we're going to be working on as well as a more official flush product that we'll probably be doing some work on in 2022, but the back end of that was a potassium product. And feel free to talk a little bit about how you came to that formulation and the humic substance that you have in there, and help us introduce this product that we will be introducing at the GIS in a month or so from now in San Diego, if that all comes off. But what's your take on K-Vantage, and how did it come to be?
One of the discoveries I made this past year, reflecting back, is using technologies and chemistry that we call eco-adaptive. In other words, there's some chemistries that are not compatible with living systems, which kind of describes most fertilizers, by the way.
Right.
There's when I started the project, I reviewed something like 70 different fertilizer materials. When you asked me to develop a potassium product, they also asked me to develop a flush product. And what I discovered was, if we rely entirely upon the fertilizer materials that are out there, typically we cannot achieve what I would call ecological balance. A balance that microbes are accustomed to, a balance that soils are naturally balanced to. And it was quite an eye-opener for me. My wife and I developed a soil database, a global database, soils from all over the world. And from that, the question arose, what about soil solution? Because fertilizers certainly affect soil solution. How can we impact soil solution positively rather than negatively? And this put me on a very, very long search. And I'll give you a good example. If you want to use calcium nitrate, for example, as a calcium source, in my opinion, and from an eco-adaptive perspective, it totally fails, because the ratio of calcium to nitrate is 0.5. So there's very little calcium in relation to nitrate. Now, this is a very common fertilizer, and it's positioned as a calcium product, but it isn't. It cannot be, because as soon as you use it, you are overwhelming the calcium with way too much nitrate. And the true balance of calcium to nitrate in a soil solution on a molar basis, not parts per million, not percentage, but on a molar basis, is 2.3. So if you're putting in something that has a 0.5 to 1 ratio, you're never going to achieve balance. And that led to another question: what is balance? And on and on and on it went for me all year long. And that became the basis for developing the K-Vantage. What can we look at that's actually environmentally safe, environmentally useful, and it's going to work? And it's looking like it's got a tremendous potential, because I don't think you need to use very much of it in the first place to get an effect. And it's totally the opposite of potassium chloride. It's just totally the opposite of that. It's already linked to a carbon molecule, not a chloride. And oh yeah, that's another thing. If you take straight potassium chloride and try to achieve a potassium chlorine balance in the soil, it's not achievable with that product called calcium chloride. It knocks all the balance off. So that became the basis for going forward. Yeah, the chloride is very destructive, because again, you don't have, if you look at how much potassium is in true soil solution, you look at how much chloride is in true soil solution, you'll never hit that balance using potassium chloride synthetic chemicals. There's no way. You got to use something else. And that became the big challenge. What are we going to use besides potassium nitrate, potassium chloride? What are we going to use? So we ended up using potassium acetate, ended up using potassium formate, and a little splash of potassium bicarbonate, which you don't want to hear. Bicarbonate is such a nasty word.
It's not going to create the same level of damage that bicarbonates in the water are going to.
No,
we were concerned about that.
It's just a little bit in there, just trying to mimic nature, because there are carbonates and bicarbonates in soil solution normally. Right. I mean, okay, you put on nasty water that changes all that. That's not the same thing.
And we're pretty excited about this product, and particularly at the back end of any kind of traditional flush. But even used on a regular basis, if you see a lot of sodium in a soil, this level of bioactivity of potassium will help keep potassium ahead of sodium curve in that soil solution, so sodium-induced wilt can be reduced. I think that's a fair assessment, and that's what we're expecting to see in our beta trials that finish up in the next few weeks. So we're pretty excited about that. I mean, it's something again that we will be talking about at the national show in San Diego, and the humic substance that you have in there, what we call biocharge is part of that same package. And you kind of helped us brand the whole concept of biocharge, which is this foundation of every product that we have, and really the backbone of that is that HPTA approved humic substance package that has multiple forms of humates, including this thing that you and I call Mississippi mud, that we're not even really sure what it is, but it seems to do magical things. Not that I'm not
going to give any away trade secrets why I pick humic acids over a fulvic material, because we have our secrets on how we do that. But we're selecting materials that are HPTA approved, and we know they're good. Yeah. We know they're quite good,
which is really good. Well, I want to kind of wrap this thing up so that we can move on. And since we are between the holidays, I want to wish everybody a very happy New Year. And I want to thank all of you guys. This is typically what we'll do for an hour or two on a Monday at 11 o'clock. And luckily we have somebody like Lawrence that can give us a real deep dive into some of the science so that we can take it out into the field. But I want to thank all of our clients and all of our business partners over the years, and we look forward to a wonderful new year. Feel free to go around and say thank you. Anybody that wants to jump in here, don't leave me hanging.
I echo that. I want to thank, first of all, our team, Lawrence, for giving us all this education that we need every Monday. And
we're always learning.
Always learning. Some of us takes longer than others, mainly me. So I appreciate the consistency of banging it into my head. But and then I again want to appreciate or thank all of our clients, customers, and business partners out there for a wonderful year. So Merry Christmas.
Absolutely. Merry Christmas, everybody.
Yep. For sure.
Which was last week, but that's okay.
Yeah, I guess it's true.
But Happy New Year just as well.
Thank you all. Thank you, Joel. Thanks for putting this together. This is a lot of fun.
I definitely want to thank Lisa Kiefer and Melissa Bodine, who is an integral part of our team, and certainly all the families and part of our family, because our life is not always easy, but our family members that support us as we get out and about and go see people. It's not an easy life all the time, but I am grateful for all of our families and the support that they give us, so we can go out and help to change the world. And having said all of that, we are here every week. Next week, I'm not sure who we have up next week. I know we have Tony Leonard coming up from the Philadelphia Eagles on the podcast, so keep an eye out for that. And Kevin, you've got somebody.
Next week I think we'll have Ben Wilmarth from Osprey Meadows at Tamarac Resort in central Idaho. Interesting story. He's retaking a golf course that he left 6 years ago when they shut the course down. And so it's sat fallow for the last 6.5 years. And he's been tasked with rejuvenating it and bringing it back to life. So
how cool is that?
Yeah.
Who better to find the layout than the guy that left it?
Exactly. There'll be some interesting stories in it.
Thank you, guys. Lawrence, thank you for all your support for all the years, and have a wonderful new year. And we will be back next week right here on the Earthworks podcast. Please subscribe if you're not a subscriber. When you subscribe, we send you all sorts of interesting things telling you when we're going to show up next week. So please subscribe, and thank you for seeing us again this week on the Earthworks podcast.